milk is also a kind of a crop. It's part of agriculture, right? And so it's the largest crop on the planet. So it's a very large, part. Specifically in India, as you rightly said, we are the number one producers in terms of sheer volumetrics. We are number one, right? But there are weaknesses, which I'll just come to in a bit. 7.6% of our GDP is milk, right? If you take the animal value and the milk value, which in traditional agri-tech sense, agriculture sense, boils down to pre-harvest and post-harvest, comes to about 7.6% of our GDP. It's a $225 billion plus industry, if you look at it that way. It's 3 times the size of the telecom market, right? So it's a very big industry, and Indians consume a lot of milk because for us, it's still an important part of protein because we are still not a big meat market, right? This industry, a lot of good pioneering work done by folks like Amul, Mother Dairy, KMF, Sudha Milk, which is Comfed, right? The fundamental business model has been to move milk from the unorganized sector into the organized sector, right? So thanks to the pioneering work done by these large companies for the last 50, 60 years, today we have about 25% of milk in the organized sector. 75% is still unorganized, but compared to fruits and vegetables and other segments, it's still a very, very commendable job because in fruits and vegetables, less than 5% is in the organized sector. 95% is still unorganized, right? So the fundamental business model so far in the last 50, 60 years has been to move milk from the unorganized sector into the organized sector. There has not been a lot of focus on the unit economics at a farm level, right? What does it mean to shift the farmer from a hobby level farmer to a backyard, from a backyard level farmer to a more entrepreneurial level, right? There's been no focus on that part, which I think is pretty important, right? Because it's not tenable otherwise. That's number one. Number two, the overall supply chain efficiency in terms of collecting more amount of good milk from fewer number of farmers, right? If today there's a large dairy out there who's collecting about 10 million liters of milk, they're probably collecting 10 million liters of milk from 3 to 4 million farmers. So on an average, you're only collecting 2 to 3 liters of milk, 2 to 3 liters of milk per farmer, which you can imagine the supply chain efficiency. Ideally, you should be collecting 100, 200, 300 liters per farmer. So I think to summarize, the key weaknesses, in my opinion, are we need more farm side focus so that the per capita productivity and herd level productivity can go up. 2, there needs to be more work done around the quality aspect. And 3rd, they give comfort to the consumers so that the consumers feel very comfortable and can pay higher, and also it can become an export grade milk. So, right, we need traceability as well. On an annualized basis, an Indian farmer's productivity will be about 1,200 to 1,500 liters per year per animal on an annualized basis, right? This would be at least 8 to 10 times higher in the other countries, right? It'll be around 10 to 15,000 liters per animal per year when you look at a developed country. So you're talking about 1/10 of what can be really achieved in a place like Israel and New Zealand or US or Europe. All it needs is, and a lot of this productivity improvement doesn't warrant any genetic change, right? It's all basic management practices. Okay. If you're talking about how do I improve, if you've already reached some 5,000, 6,000 liters per year on an annualized basis, then you're talking about, okay, man, to increase this further, I need to improve the genetics, right? But we're talking about 1,200 liters on an annualized basis. Very simple things like making sure our animals get right kind of drinking water at the farm, ensuring that they get very basic one-on-one nutrition at the farm, and basic animal husbandry practices can sort of increase it by manifold. We just can't focus on one part of the supply chain. We need to focus on the animals at the farm. We need to focus on the various aggregation points of the dairy supply chain, such as the collection centers and the chilling centers. We need to focus on cold chain because milk is perhaps the most perishable crop out there. It's not the tomatoes, it's not the potatoes, it's the milk that's most perishable, right? So how do you manage the cold chain more optimally? And then take sort of a farm to consumer type of an approach. So what we did was we thought we would digitize the entire supply chain, and that's the best way to solve for the three weaknesses that I mentioned: productivity, quality, and traceability. Right? At the farm side, how using IoT, Internet of Things technologies like animal wearable, which is like a pedometer on the animal's leg, using things like facial recognition of animals so that you can uniquely identify them in a very foolproof manner, right? And using the data to build alternate credit score for the dairy farmers. So what we've done is, when we started, we were typically only focused on providing the entire technology stack to the service providers, right? To the dairy processors. It could be dairy cooperatives, it could be private dairies, and all of that. In the last 1 year or slightly longer, just before COVID started, we also had this trend where we had a lot of FMCG companies who are brands, big brands, hyperlocal companies, approaching us and saying, "Hey guys, we'd like to launch our private label milk, right? But we don't want to deal with the farmers in Bihar or UP or Tamil Nadu or Karnataka. That's too hard for us. That's not our business. Our business is to own the consumer, build a brand, right?" Then we said, okay, if this is the question, then we can actually start becoming your milk procurement arm. We're also in the process of setting up centers in and around Mysore, in and around Rajahmundry, and we're also considering putting up something in between Mumbai and Pune, so that's a market that we could sort of address. But those are areas that is in our roadmap. Maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, we will set up. And right now it is basically Eastern UP and Kolar, where we have our completely digitized end-to-end network running. So the 11 million liters of milk is what we digitize today. So we are present in about 33,000, more close to 34,000 villages in India, right? This is almost, we are present in about 22 states, 33,000 villages. We digitize close to, it fluctuates, goes between 10.5 to 11, depending on the seasonality. If you look at Amul, be it their Jamnagar Milk Union or a Banaskanta Milk Union, they're all our customers. They use our technology. KMF, which is the second largest in the country, be it their Kolar Milk Union, Bangalore Milk Union, Tumkur, Mysore, Hassan, they're all our customers, because these large federations, as you know, are divided into multiple unions, right? They're an aggregation of multiple unions. They're a customer. The third largest in the country, which is Comfed, which is Sudha Dairy, be it Patna Milk Union, be it Ara Milk Union, they're all our customers. 2-3 points by way of the big picture. One is, we'd like to double our expansion in the next, our reach in the next 3 years. So we are in 33,000 villages. We'd like to be in about 70,000 villages in the next 3 years, so that our tech stack is leveraged by a larger number of farmers. We have about 3 million farmers on our platform registered. We'd like to take it to close to about 8 to 9 million farmers in the next 3 years. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, we'd like to ensure that we become like the de facto tech stack for enabling high quality milk, right? If anyone thinks quality, we should become the top recall, right? It could be an Amazon, which is planning to launch their differentiated milk. It could be a Coke, which is planned to launch their differentiated milk. We should become the top recall for all of them when they think about high quality, differentiated, export grade, high caliber, highly nutritious sort of. We have raised about $20 million so far. This includes, investors like Omnivore, right? And we were incubated at IIT Madras, right? Most of my co-founders are either from IIT Madras or IIT Kharagpur. Mm-hmm. That's where we were incubated. Omnivore was the first institutional investor, after which we had investors like WRVI, which was earlier called IndusAge. Then we had Gates Foundation come in, Qualcomm come in, Bloom come in. Binny Bansal, who was with Flipkart at that point, he's also an investor in us. A couple of Japanese investors like BNext and Arun Seed are our investors. Okay. US 500 Startup is one of our investors. So we have investors across the US, Japan, Venture Highway, which was started by ex-Google folks and Cisco. They're one of our investors. So we have a good bunch of investors, and we raised about $20 million so far. We are now in the process of raising sort of a small bridge round, as we call it, somewhere between $15 to $20 million to help us scale our operations. And we hope to close this round between March and June.